don't have the slide for
Okay.
Aztec. Okay.
Got it. I got it. I got you.
Okay, thank you.
You know, in this new virtual world, I find myself saying that a whole lot more than I ever did in the past.
Okay, we're good.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we find ourselves being, I think, more patient, more accepting the problems, and calm, I guess is a word, to try and stay calm. And it's like, it is what it is. We'll survive no matter what goes wrong with this technology.
We'll figure it out.
Yep. I had to tell someone was invited to a virtual baby shower. That was quite different. And some people were on phones. One lady you could tell was in a car, but she wasn't driving. Someone else was driving, thank goodness. And laptops. And it was just strange. And I said, and I had a hard time. It was, I forget what kind of app, Microsoft, I think. And I said, I know what the students feel like. You know, this is all new to them, and trying to load Zoom or Google or whatever and join a classroom. So we're all learning together now at this point. There's, we're all like on the same level. So pretty cool.
Yeah, and we all recognize that there are technical difficulties that we don't understand and can't explain, and you just have to figure out a way forward.
Yeah, just like we just did. So it
Yeah,
worked.
exactly.
All right, well, I have a minute after, so we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Lori Duran, and I'm on the OACE board. And so I'm here to invite our presenters, and this is the blended learning workshop, so that you're in the right workshop, as you can see. And we have Christina Miller and Deanna Crossan. Am I saying that right, Deanna?
You are, yeah.
So they, I believe, both work for Paxen Steck-Vaughn. Most of us have been here around long enough, familiar with Steck-Vaughn, and then it converted to Paxon. So Christina is a national consultant and worked as adult ed for many years, 30 years, over 30 years.
Many years.
Many years. And started in a program, right, with over 2,000 students in an adult ed program, served statewide for developing professional development. And now you conduct national webinars for us. So thank you very much. And Deanna, if I have this right, you also have something to do with Aztec software, correct?
I do.
Awesome. So thank you both, ladies, for doing this presentation today. And it is all yours. So take us off.
Thank you so much. I'm going to just introduce Deanna Crossan. She is everything extraordinaire with Paxen Steck-Vaughn into the Aztec family, and she's going to explain how all this came about with the merger. And I'll turn it over to you, Deanna. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Deanna Crossan. I'm the National Sales Director for Aztec and Paxon Publishing. I want to welcome everybody, first of all, to today's session on blended instruction. Chris has some phenomenal information she's going to share with everybody. But before she does that, I just wanted to take the mic over for a minute and let everyone know earlier this year, Paxon Publishing and Aztec Software joined forces. So we're one company now. And that's really exciting for us because both of these companies have been for the last, for 40 years or more, have been providing quality educational materials for adult learners. And that's our driving force, is develop really good tools to use in the classroom. And so it was really exciting for us when the two companies joined together, because now we can offer this full array of materials in print and digital for the adult ed classroom. And the other thing I really, because I was with Paxon for a couple of years before this, one of the things I really admire about Aztec is their commitment and dedication to their customers, because that's the same kind of commitment and dedication we've had at Paxon, we've had at Steck-Vaughn for all these years. So we're really excited about this new chapter in our story, and even more excited that all you adult educators are joining us as we move through those chapters. And so without any further ado, I want to introduce to you Chris Miller, who has been providing trainings, presentations, workshops all across the United States One of the nice things you can say about this virtual experience is I think earlier this week there was a day where she was doing something in Texas in the morning, something in Florida in midday, and then she was doing something, I think it was in California in the afternoon. And I'm like, you couldn't do that if you had to get on a plane and fly those places. But because you're doing it from home virtually, you are able to participate across the country. And no one, I don't think, has been in more time zones in a single day that I know than Chris Miller. And so, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you provide the great information that you do. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And it is crazy hopping all these time zones so quickly. But I do appreciate you joining me today for this presentation on blended learning. I put this together last year, not really realizing how appropriate it was going to be for now in this virtual world we find ourselves in. I've been doing some training for the Texas Department of Corrections, and they use Zoom also. And so one of the superintendents down there said, we'll meet in Zoom land. And I'm thinking, that is so appropriate. Yes, we all will meet in Zoom land. It's fine. But it is so much better when we can see each other face to face and really network in our conferences. So hopefully we'll be able to be together next year. And I look forward to that, seeing everybody in person. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. What we're going to do today is to go through a presentation, and then I'm going to go out to the web and I'm going to show you the program that so many of you probably have either seen before or heard about, but Paxon Focus, which has so many bells and whistles for this virtual world that I think it's worth taking a little bit of time and going through it, because it is a phenomenal program. I will restate that I've been in adult ed for over 30 years, and I started out as an instructor and then got my own program and had anywhere from 64 to 68 teachers at any given time, 2,000 students through the program annually, with the largest prison in the state. So, I live and breathe adult ed still, and I feel so fortunate to still be in the field, even though it's in a different capacity now. But this was one of the most fun parts of my job when I had my own program, was to do professional development. And I was invited to the state office to do that for a while too. So, it's just been something I've loved to do. And so I'm glad to bring this information to you this morning or this afternoon. We are in different time zones here too. So we'll get started. And I will see about getting there we go. I'm going to minimize myself. Y'all may still be able to see me, but it's distracting for me to see my face over there, but I'm glad that y'all can enter in this virtual world too. So what we want to do today is we want to talk about blended learning. How does that work in our adult ed world? It's a little different concept. So we'll look at the pros and we'll look at the cons. We're going to look at different designs that are available that have already been worked through in K-12. Some of you may have tried some of these, but I'm going to talk about those. Then we're going to take a tour of Paxon Focus, and then we're going to come back and talk about how to get started if you're up for a blended program. And I think that most of us have to be in this world today. So this is the blended world. You see that we have a teacher-led, we have online, and it forms together to go into the school. Now, we may have to do things a little bit differently since COVID, and we're not doing a lot of teacher-led in the classroom, but I want you to think as we go through today how you could offer what you do in class on a platform like we're doing today. You can see me, I can see you, or most of you. Think about how this using a Zoom platform would be to do the blended approach, or another platform. You may be in a college that has Canvas or Blackboard that you might be able to think about using as your classroom piece of the blended learning. So just a little bit of history about blended. It's interesting because, back in the day when it first came about, they called it hybrid, or a mixed mode of instruction. And then by the late 1990s, there became a vague definition. And that's when it truly took shape, was when that definition kind of pulled all the pieces together. And even by 2006, I've got cited on the screen, people were beginning to write books about it. And this Handbook of Blended Learning by Bonk and Graham, came about in 2006. So that's when it really hit the scene. Now, we do know that for the most part, it was a K-12 program. And as we go through today, think about this adjusting of a K-12 blended learning program could be adapted to your adult ed program, because I think it's worthy of it. I think that we've got to start thinking in these terms anyway, because of the virtual world we find ourselves in. As I said, Zoom land, here we are. So there's just there's just different possibilities of combining the two, the internet and that instruction with some kind of digital media. And if it works for you, then it works. And so think about it with an open mind. The other thing that I think is important about blended is that a lot of times workplace programs use this type of instruction to work with their employees, to have them do the training manuals, the studying, and the gathering of information while they're at home, and then come back to the classroom and put it all together, a time for asking questions. It's almost that flip concept that we're going to talk about a little bit more too. So think about these different ways that what you're doing in the classroom can transfer over and help your students who may be going into the workplace and going through training programs. So what is blended learning? This is the solid definition, that you've got a program where the students learn in part through online learning, but that gives them control over the time that they invest in studying, the location. They can do it just about anywhere. If they don't have access to a computer, think about this, they can go to the library and jump on the computers. They can go to a campus that has a learning lab. They have the flexibility of being able to have different locations that can accommodate their learning time. They have a large charge of the direction that their learning is going to go in. Those of you that have studied adult ed know that Malcolm Knowles, who is considered the father of adult ed, really put this as one of his assumptions, is that adults want to be in charge of their own learning. So this blended concept is really an applicable piece of that, because adults, as they are on the internet, can do more exploration. They can go in different directions if they want to go deeper into a subject that you're studying as a blended concept. So just think about the different advantages that the students have, and they can set their own pace. If someone needs longer time to do the blended program, then they certainly have that time frame. So think about that one piece, the first part of the definition, that really puts the student or the learner in the driver's seat. The next is that it has to be some piece of it, and it says brick and mortar on the screen, but it could be Zoom land if you wanted to do it like that. But it's where the instructor is leading the instruction. So our students, as you know, in adult ed, I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today about how important it is for our students to know that we're still there, that we are not just putting them on the computer and leaving them as a distance ed program might, but that we're interacting with them and being a big part of this blended learning program and process. So it has to have time where the instructor is literally with the student, either virtually or in person. That is the second part of this definition. And then I think the third part is one of the most important pieces that you need to understand is that this is not just one of those, well, go get on the computer and do this, that, and the other. And then we'll go back to class and we'll do this, that, and the other. No, it is where the learning online is literally merged with in-class objectives. So that is a seamless process of working the classroom instruction and the online instruction that has the same focus and has the same outcomes that you're looking for. So think about that third part of the definition as being one of the most critical pieces that you can incorporate in your blended program. So as always, it really begins with teachers and teaching, right? We have this shift in the instructional delivery, like it says, that gives students over control over their learning time. And think about that. Our students are adults with adult responsibilities. They have children, they have jobs, they have all sorts of things that really interfere sometimes with them coming to class. But if they can come to class and really have the advantage of another type of delivery, like they know they can get more out of the online piece also, they're going to have more control over their learning because they know that they can do that in a different location at a different time. The device are not just the delivery, but they also give content and direction. So this idea that they can just jump on a computer and go research things is not part of really the blended learning that we want to put together. We want to have where there is an instructional piece in the program that you choose as maybe the software that you're going to use with in-class instruction. So think about those two pieces that really go together, that what is reinforced either in the computer software with the instructional piece, reinforced in the classroom, and those two pieces working together to give the student a broad breadth of instructional content. So those two things I think are really important. And then just having technology in your classroom is really not part of the blended learning. It's great to have access to those computers, to those tablets, to any kind of device that you might be able to share with the students. But just having that is not really a blended program. It really has to have that interactive piece where you've got the instruction face-to-face or virtually, as we're talking about, the online curriculum that supplements the in-class piece. So think about those things as we go forward. Now let's look at the pros and consider how this fits. Just think of yourself being in the classroom or starting to put a blended program together. We have so many challenges in adult ed. Since the inception of and creation of the college and career readiness standards, we have a lot to teach and the students have a lot to master. So use this time on the computer for your students as a way to maybe expand that learning. You can extend the time that they get this rich interaction of the instructional piece from not only you imparting that knowledge, but within the software too. So that's a real pro that we can extend the learning time if we use a blended concept. Think about the students that miss class. How would they ever catch up? And a lot of times they start falling farther and farther behind as they go through, because the more time that they miss, the further behind they get, right? So if you have a component that is a piece of instructional software that the student can use to catch up with what has been imparted in class, that's just all the better. So that's another reason that I think it's a good thing with software and in class, this blended concept, so that the students don't get behind, that they can make up their classes. To make doing coursework more convenient, more appealing, and more personalized, think about the attention that you can give to your students. We know in adult ed, our students are all over the place. We are like, I've always equated it to the Little Red Schoolhouse, right? So that our students in the classroom are on all different levels. And so if we do an instructional piece in the classroom, we usually have to do small group to address skill levels or find some things like maybe writing a writing exercise that they could do in different levels. But think about being able to give them different assignments in courseware, that to get on the computer and have a pre-GED level and a GED level and maybe a literacy level that would impact the student's ability to work. So those are some real pros to have the flexibility built within the courseware too. And then a lot of times it's easier to monitor the progress of the students if you have access to what they're doing on the computer. So software and digital programs that track the student that you could go in and look at and say, you know, I know the student has just finished this lesson and this is the score they made on the practice exercises. It's really a great way for you to keep an eye on the students and know what they've done in our virtual world. You don't have that with books. So, you know, it's hard not being in the classroom to monitor students. Now, a few more pros. Think about more practice that's available online, quizzes, assessments. And if you have a good package program, you're going to have a program that auto grades all of this. Your time nor the student's time will be used in grading assignments. So here you have a different assessments, quizzes, all sorts of practice exercises that can be auto graded for you. Think about all the online resources that you can use that really bring instruction to life. Think about all the Khan Academy lessons that you could upload into a program and use as additional instruction. Say that you have a great YouTube video that really shows a student how to do a skill. They can watch it over and over as many times as it takes for them to really get the gist of what they're being taught. You've also got the flexibility of going to different websites. So all of these online resources are really an advantage if you're doing a blended learning program. And then think about just your basic literacy skills. I remember when computers came on our adult ed scene, and it was they didn't even have brains in them. You know, they were just those dummy computers that you put a floppy in. But it's come a long way since then. But there are still students that need to learn how to operate a computer, that they need to know how to manipulate the mouse. They need to have the basic computer skills. And with an online program, they're going to be able to get that. Think about just the editing features, pulling up a Word document, being able to cut and paste and revise and different things that they're going to have to do eventually on the GED test or high setter task, any of them. So the basic computer skills, while we can teach them in class, great, but think about the additional practice that a student could get as they're doing, looking at search engines and exploring the internet. So it really is advantageous, and those are just some more pluses that I think are important, and I think are worthy of us looking at a blended learning program. Now, what are the student advantages? I really do think that students will reach that high bar if we put it up there for them. And I think that as we hold students accountable, just think about the expectation that we have in the classroom. We want to carry that expectation into a blended program also, because if the students know that they have this available, then with your encouragement and with your showing them how to utilize these different assets that they have, the different resources, you just think about how high their standards could be set to be able to be more productive and to do better on assessments and just overall learning in general. But we have to set those expectations for them. Self-directed learning, I've already touched on this, and any of you have heard me speak before, you know that I've put a lot of faith and value in Malcolm Knowles and his assumptions. And I think that he was right on, because if we're going to empower our students, which is our ultimate goal in adult ed, we want to give them more than just an education. We want to give them a lot of times the self-confidence that they lack, but to let them help with this instructional program is really a great thing for their self-esteem. So get them involved in looking at where they want to go with their education and let them be a part of their own learning. Also, if they're on the computer, that they have a very safe, non-judgmental environment that they can make a mistake and then go back and maybe do some research and find out why they made that mistake. They have the ability to have things auto-graded so that at any point in time, they can access, once they've submitted a quiz, the ability to see if they've done it incorrectly. So think about that in a non-judgmental environment. They're not having the teacher look at it at that point. They're able to see what they need to be doing along with the different aspects of the online program. So really, there's a lot more probably student advantages than I've mentioned, but think about your students. How would they benefit from a blended learning program? So we know that the students benefit. How do you benefit? And I think that when we do supplement this face-to-face environment, when we have these online learning tools, one, it simplifies the assessment. Let's say that you wanted to give your student an assessment and you had a program that had a formative test that would assign the lessons to the students, that auto-graded the assessment for you and placed the students into the proper place. Think about how that simplifies your life, how it will give you more time to do things that that you need to be doing in helping individualize the student, the structure some more. And in that same line, talking about quizzes and tests, those can be graded immediately upon submission and the students get feedback, because you know there's nothing worse than a student not knowing if they got it right. In class, they're always looking back to the answer to see that they got it right, but online, they even have the advantage sometimes with the right program to have the answer, but not only the answer, but how to get that answer. They're not going to have you right there beside them when they're online. So having a program that really gave them the answer, but then the explanation is an asset too. Auto scoring the quizzes I've already talked about, that can save your time and their time. They don't have to look at the answers like we usually have them do in class. So that's a time saver too. You have the ability to choose programs that will put your students on and generate a learning path for them. And I think that's really important when we talk about this virtual world and them being so remote from us. You know, there are times when you're not going to see the student probably for a long time. You can connect with them over the phone. You can connect with them through email. There are lots of different ways we can talk to them. But if they have a way that they can continue working without having to wait on that, with a program that generates their lessons for them, tells them what's next, that's going to be a huge advantage for the teachers also. Online learning platforms that have reporting capabilities. You think about all the time that it takes And I remember counting those hours up. How many hours does this student have before I can post test? Um, so if you have a software program that generates time on task that you don't have to sit there and count up on their sign-in sheet, how many hours they've spent in class, think about that advantage too. So I think that that's huge with teachers. Um, so those are just some things that I thought of that were advantages for the teacher when you have a good software program that you can implement with this blended program. Now, of course, as in everything, there are disadvantages, and a lot of times the expense of computers, both for a program and for the student. A lot of the software, I know that I wouldn't be able to do it on a cell phone, not very easily, simply because sometimes it just doesn't work right on a phone. And most of our students do have a phone. They can get some of the information. And there's some programs and there's some students. Some of these younger ones can manipulate those cell phones, iPhones better than I had ever thought could be done. So it's interesting in that case that if that's the only thing they have, that's great. The expense on getting an iPad or maybe a computer is a disadvantage. Think about your local budget, having to refurbish computers and replace them ever so many years. So that is an expense. The technical tools and resources or lack thereof. Um, if you have a computer lab that the students can access, and you have an IT department that's really backlogged and can't get to it, then having the resources to keep up with your computers and software installation and all that can be a disadvantage. The other thing that all the computers do need to be reliable, up to date, easy to use. We know that a lot of times if a frustration kicks in and the student has a bad experience with a piece of equipment, they just shut down, right? So they need to be reliable, easy to use, and up to date. Group work can be challenging, and we're going to see as we look through some of the different models for blended that there are groupings that you can do with your students. If you don't have the physical space in your classroom, that's going to put you at a disadvantage. If you don't have another room to do send students into to do some group work while you work with a group in the classroom, these different configurations can be sometimes challenging. And then, as always, we're finding out that there's more of a digital divide than we thought there was. I think a lot of students don't have the ability to have the internet locally. I know in my area for the K-12 program, they set up school buses that were hotspots. And the students, when we were in this COVID lockdown, students could keep up that didn't have software or didn't have internet. They could go to these large school buses, either sit right beside them or enter the buses to do their schoolwork. So a lot of times we have to be creative to make sure that our students have not only the devices, but have internet access. Now, I'm going to suggest that you survey your students, and you could do this in a couple of different ways. You could actually do this as you do the enrollment process with your students, but you need to find out several things. What technology do they have access to? Do they have a computer? Do they have an iPad? Do they have a tablet? Those things are important for you to know as you put your program together. How can you help your learners use the technology that's going to be beneficial for them? Sometimes students have to be shown how to use these different devices and to manipulate the software. That is a consideration too, because a lot of times if the software is not user friendly, I can promise you my teachers wouldn't use it and the students certainly wouldn't use it. So it's imperative that any software you do get to use as the blended part of your program is easily accessible. Also, with the internet, if they have it, how are they going to log on? Do they know how to, if they get bumped off, do they know how to get back into the internet? All of these things that you and I sometimes take for granted that we've done, some of our students haven't done. And maybe especially some of the older students, the younger ones cut their teeth on all this. So to them, it's not anything real new, but for some of our older students, it might be a situation where you're going to need to see if they have access and do they know how to get on the internet. The other thing is, do they have email? Because you're going to need some modes of communication and probably several different ways to communicate. Email is always a good one, but make sure that your students give you an up-to-date email address and one that's active. Sometimes our students change emails like they do cell phones, so it's really crazy sometimes. But make sure that you keep in touch with them through email or phone call. What basic digital literacy skills do they have so that you can get an idea of what you're going to have to teach? So you need to think about what skills that they actually need to participate in your program, and then through the survey find out if they have those skills. So that's important. What's important in a software? So we've talked about we know what we're doing when we're face to face, right? We know how to engage students and keep them interested in the program, because if not, they're gone anyway, right? We need to think about those same things to keep our students active and engaged in the software also. So think about programs that have a multi-sensory approach. Maybe a program that with headsets they could listen to while they're seeing things played out on the screen. This interactive approach is critical for our students, because so many of our students, as y'all know as well as I do, sometimes have different learning styles, and we need to accommodate. In the classroom, we could do a lot of different active learning activities, but on the computer, sometimes it's more difficult to do those active learning techniques. Always, and I've mentioned this already, always it has to be easy. If you don't make it easy for the students to work with you on the online piece, as well as if you're in a virtual world, the Zoom world, the Zoom land they need to go into, they're not going to show up. It's not as easy as parking their car and walking into a schoolroom. So think about making your program easy to use. Think about programs that have that multimedia, the animation, the graphics that keep them engaged. It's really important for all of our students to have that interaction. So many of our students are not just visual learners, but they're auditory learners too. And we have to accommodate both of those things. Think about, it says to highlight the critical features such as auto score. That's important in a software. You don't want them to have to send it to you and you grade it. So find software that has the audio, the communication tools, the auto scoring. And then, of course, for our reports, it's been difficult. I've talked to some of my former teachers, and they've just had a real hard time keeping up with time on task for their students. So you sometimes have to get special permission from the state office. You have to do creative things in this time that we're in right now to be able to count the time that your students using, even studying and doing different things that would have been done in classroom, but now are being done remotely. So we need to capture all that time so that you can get credit for the time on task. And then just to keep with the students from time to time and make sure that everything is working smoothly. So now I want to go into Paxon Focus, and I'm going to do this for the last few minutes, and then we're going to come back. I'm just going to show you a couple of the features, and then we'll come back and finish up because I want to show you some of the different models of blended learning. And let me see, let's go to find this screen for you. And I hope you can see the screen. This is the Paxon platform. This is my demo account. And somebody unlocked their microphone if you can't see the screen and I'm talking about something you can't see. But I'm going to go ahead and log in and show you that there are several different levels for this program. Paxon Focus includes the software. And if you recognize these book covers, think about this. If you have a book in your classroom that you see on the screen, that entire book has been put into the software, and it makes such an easy transition for you to do a Zoom lesson or an in-class lesson. If you're doing a hybrid of one of the structured lessons, and then the student can go home and continue that lesson in the book if they can't take the book with them. So here you have the fundamental skill series, and this is 0 to 5.9. So you have math, reading, and writing within this series. The next series that I'm going to show you is the Pre-GED. This goes all the way from 6 through 8.9. And you've got your Pre-GED math, Pre-GED language arts, social studies, and now to your left, you see the Pre-GED science. Then the GED series, which is 9 through 12, all for those books too, the math, the language arts, the science, and the social studies. And you see tucked right in there in the middle is a Spanish version. So all of those three series, the fundamental skills, the 0 to 5.9, the Pre-GED 6 through 8.9, and the GED series are 9 through 12, are all in English and in Spanish in both the print series and this online program. So this is just a great series. If you have seen these book covers with the arches, those are primarily for our states that don't do the GED. They have their students test with HiSET or TASC. These books, like you know, the HiSET and the TASC have the reading and the writing in two different sections. So the books are set up that way too. So the instruction will follow. So that series is not in Spanish, but it's available if you'd like to look at it. I wanted to show you a couple of features that I've talked about. I think the best thing is to go over here to the teacher app. And there are going to be a few things that need grading, not many, and that's only if a exercise asks the student to write a sentence. If you're going to have a contraction, cannot, and write a word that makes cannot into a contraction. That's all it is. So most of them are fully graded within the program, within the software, and you won't have to do anything. Students and teachers can take notes within each of the subject areas. There's great communication. I'm going to show you this communication because this is terrific. You see that there are ways to go into each one of the courses and write the students a little note. And I've written this one, welcome to Pre-GED language. I'm the teacher. It tells the day I've put this together. And I've sent all of my class a note where the class will be out next week. You could also do what I've done with this one and put in my virtual office hours are Monday and Thursday from 8:30 to 11. So there's all different things. This sits on the landing page for each of your students that's enrolled. In this case, this is the fundamental skills. This other one was Pre-GED. So any class that you teach, any course, you can put this information on the landing page so the students see it every time they open it. Now, the other thing that is really great is that you can communicate from within the program. And all of these, this is just a list of all the things. So if I was going to talk to Charnette, I would have Charnette's email address in her registration. So it automatically pulls up her email address. I can send myself a copy if I wanted to. I could put a subject line in, I could put a message to her and send it from within the program. So that I think is a great feature, and it's one that the students can send back to you, to your email. And I think that that gives a lot of the communication in this virtual world, I think is so important, because if the students get stuck on something, they need to be able to shoot you an email and let you know that they're having trouble. So there's a calendar. I'm not going to open that because it takes a second to populate because I've got a lot of data in it, but the calendar just keeps you organized. It has due dates for different things that you've assigned. People, I am going to go into here because this shows all of the people who are in your program. And I don't, there, sorry, I went too fast with it. These are all the students that I have in here, and you can see that here's Claudio, who is enrolled in all language arts, GED math, and pre-GED. So all of your students will show up here. You will have the ability to see what they've done. This is their average score of everything they've submitted, the time that they've spent in that particular class. This is GED math I'm going across. And you'll have a bar graph to show how much progress they're making. Now, anytime you want to, you can click on the student's name, and you're going to be able to see everything that that student has done. It's going to show you for Claudio, which has, no, let me go back and find somebody that has some data in here. Let's just go with student one in this science class. So I can click on student one, which should have a name, but that student, it shows you all of the scores that that student has made on everything. Really good student, huh? So you've got all the quizzes that the student has made, the date that it was made, and a lot of different information. You could click under activity, and it's going to take you day by day. Here's one day that the student spent an hour and 10 minutes working. Here's another day that the student spent 7 hours and 48 minutes. There's another place for reports, but this kind of gives you an idea of what they're doing within the class. Reports, you can run reports from the grade book. I'll show you the grade book and show you how wonderful that is. And you can actually do student reports, either a student in the current class or maybe a student that's in all of your classes. Maybe you want to do it for all of the students or just a single student. So you're able to run reports from this spot right here. And then you can also do mastery reports, mastery by range, or all of the data that might be mastered. So there is a flexibility within your reports that I think will give you everything you need. On the admin side too, there's just a multitude of reports that are really great. Editor lets you individualize. We're in the GED science, but you can see that you can go in and to add things. You could make this, if you didn't want the student to do this lesson, all you have to do is click right here and it turns red and a line through the eye, so that student will never see that. There are formative tests that give the student an idea of what they need to study, and we'll go into one of those in just a minute, but I'm just going to scroll down and let you see that every lesson within this with the GED science, you're going to have plenty of information. You've got the lesson from the student book, and then you've got workbooks that they can go into. The student books are just micro lessons. Those give you just a thumbnail of, say a student has learned this at one time and they just need a refresher. That's what's in the student book. The workbooks have twice as much information, twice as much instruction, and twice as much practice. So the editor, you're able to do things here that are really cool. You can add things, you can upload content, you could put a YouTube video in here, you could put a web link in here, and that would go for all of your students. And there's also a place down here, and I've done this for demonstration purposes. If I can all the way find down here, you can add activities, and you can go in and you can attach files. You can do a Google Doc, you could do a web link, a YouTube video, but then you could come over here and you could start a blog with your students. You could just start a discussion board. There's just all sorts of activities that you could do for individuals or for the class. I'm gonna go back to the front. I'm gonna go into the math because we're getting close on time. I do want to go over the different models of blended learning that you might find interesting. This is the GED math. It has a formative assessment, and it has two, because remember, one part has the GED. They can use the calculator on part of it, and part of it they can't. So this assessment will excuse students. If, say that the student took this formative and they had mastered some of the skills that were in this formative, if they met the threshold for mastery, then the student would be excused from the lessons. So they would not have to do all of the lessons. And I'll show you what that looks like. You've got unit 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see that those are all, if you open those up, there's just tons of different lessons for your students. There's a unit review quiz, then you'd go on to the next lesson. Let me open up one of these, and I'm just going to show you real quickly what, let's go to probability really quick. I don't want to do that because that's the quiz.
Hey, Christina, I put in the chat, I'm sorry to interrupt, but and maybe you said it and I missed it. Can you separate time if you work on this in class, have students on it versus working outside of class when they're at home? Because I know for here in Ohio, for our Aspire programs, we have to separate the time when we report it, what was done in class and what was done outside of class.
The time on task is going to give you the cumulative time. If you knew what lessons were done in class, then you could actually separate that time, not within the program, but you'd have to document that. So there's not a way to partition off and say, this is the time the students spent in class. And that's what you're asking, right?
Yes. So, I mean, does it tell us that they were on at night, 8 o'clock? Does it give you like a timeline so we could at least say, hey, they got on at this time and did this work?
Yes, there is a way to go in internally and set that. So I think that is on the admin side.
Okay.
But, that would be one way of doing it, I guess, if you knew what time.
Okay, no, that's, I mean, if it's outside of your class time and they did something, then you know that was,
exactly.
As long as there's a way. Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Let me show you one of these lessons real quickly. This reads everything to the student. And I know that this is, the GED level, but it will still read this to the students and sound out words that they might not have experienced before. So they've got the ability to hear it and to see it as many times as they want to. There is a way that they can look at the graphics here, and I'm going to cut that off so you might have heard that. But as they work through this, you can see that the graphics start moving and there's animation to it. So it's not just a static screen, it keeps them engaged. And then very quickly, I'm going to go next to Dr. Ken Berger, who is actually the teacher within the program. And so he is going to do, and I'm going to fast forward him too, as he explains this theoretical probability to the students in the probability, and he will do demonstrations, and the students get the advantage of having a teacher right there with them. So I'm going very quickly through this. He'll do 2 of them on some. Most lessons do have him as a part of the whole package. So that's pretty much, here's where I put in a blog for the students and they can respond to it. It's really, I think, a great feature, especially as we work through this virtual world. A discussion board I've put up for them. And remember, this is just my demonstration, so I've done both of the sides for it. we're getting close to the time. I want to show you one more feature, and then I'll go back to the PowerPoint and finish out. But this grade book is really a great thing, because here you can see at one glance all the things that your students have submitted and has been graded. And then you can go in, if you're curious to see why did Dexter make a 56 on that, you can click on it. It's going to take you right to where exactly the test he took. And you can go scroll down here. You can see what he got right, and you can see what he missed. You can see that fill in the blank. You can come right over here to this right-hand side, and it gives you several options. You could allow him a retry, but you could also talk to him. So you could type in a message here. You could even audio record yourself speaking to him, or you could go right here and video record yourself. So a lot of options in terms of communications to your students, but this is, I think, a great way. You can actually put students in a group too. If you have some of them that need just the same skill, you can go up here and put them in a clipboard. Click on that, and those students are isolated, and only what you give right here, either a worksheet or a video, YouTube, Google Doc, website, or a rich text activity, will only go to those students, not the whole class. And none of them will know that you've given them extra practice. So with that, I'm going to stop. If y'all would like a more in-depth, or you want to try this program out for a couple of weeks, contact us and we will be glad to go through and find out who we were and give you a trial practice with it. So can everybody see my screen again now? Did I get you back on the right track? We're going to talk about the different designs. And as you can see, under rotation model, there are several: station rotation, lab, flipped classroom, individual. These are, a lot of them are the same thing, except in a little bit different ways. Station rotation would be that groups of students move to different stations around the room. Here again, you've got the problem of classroom space. If you can do that, that would be great. Lab rotation is where you actually had a physical lab they could go to. A flipped classroom, we're going to talk about flipped a little bit more, just hold on to that. Individual rotation is when you really have to individualize it and assign different work for that student. You can see that there's a flex model too that's available, a la carte. A la carte is really more toward, they were going to take a course that was pretty much totally online. And then the enriched virtual is kind of along those same lines. I think that adult ed is more in line with this flipped classroom. You can Google these different things. The flexible model gives them more time doing things at home and then coming to school, which is a lot of this concept of the flip that I wanted to talk about. So let's say that you are going to do a lesson. And I would start off with maybe developing 3 or 4 lessons and trying this concept out, especially of the flipped. But assign the reading and have the students read it at home and study. And think about, once they have done that, if when they come back either online in a Zoom meeting or physically to your classroom, you have the students already with some of the knowledge that you were going to teach. And from that, you can have a more enriched discussion because they've at least studied some of it. They're going to be able to have a better understanding of what you're going to impart to them. So this flipped classroom, I think, is just a great concept to let, and it puts the responsibility on them. Because when they know that they are accountable for understanding it and then coming to class and doing discussions, I think it's going to make it a lot more interactive for everybody. So my thoughts as we conclude, that I think this future of adult ed, and I do think that even when we're in the hopefully post-COVID days, we're still going to use online instruction more than we ever have. You've probably always had a distance ed program for those students that couldn't come to class, but we've never had it this concentrated where so many of our students were online. I think as content becomes increasingly more complex and new technologies emerge, that we are going to have this new concept of either blended learning or hybrids going on for a long time. So consider a blended learning approach that combines online and classroom instruction that offers engaging curriculum and impacts students, but do something. Try it. It may not work in every situation, in every context of what you want to present as a curriculum, but develop one lesson and see how it works. And don't forget, if we all get shut down again, think about starting a Zoom class with your students if you can't physically be there with them. So Zoom and personal in class and the blended piece with a great curriculum, online software, I think is going to be the way that we work with our students. So I think we have timed out. My clock says it's right at 12:50, 1:15. I think 2:15 your time. I'm on Central Time. So anyway, thank you so much. Do I have any questions in the chat box that we wanted to talk about?
I think the only one was mine that I put in there about separating the time.
Right, and I'll check on that for you because I understand that is a consideration, that it is logged in, the time in and time out, especially on the admin side, and you can get an Excel sheet of that.
Okay.
But honestly, if anyone would like to just customer service at Paxon, let's see if I have that slide, contact us. There you go. PaxonPublishing.com is our website, or just info@PaxonPublishing.com. We'll get you to the right person to get your executive salesperson together that will contact you. So I have enjoyed being with you today. I love this blended concept. I hope I've shared some interesting information and some knowledge that you can take back and get started with your own program. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. Yes, that was awesome. I got some tips that I wrote down. So thank you so much for sharing. Any questions from anyone? Can unmute and ask?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I thank you for all your information and presenting for us today, and everyone for joining us. Hope you take away at least one thing from this. We always say and use it or inquire more information. It is recorded and will be uploaded for review. So thank you for joining our OACE conference, and everyone have a great day.
Y'all stay safe. Take care.